My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Saturday, October 20th, 2007, and I'm at the ConocoPhillips OSU Alumni Center interviewing Donald Fowler and Bobby Williams. Ooh, Bob Williams. This interview is being conducted as part of O State Stories, an oral history project of the OSU Library. Thank you for joining us today.
We appreciate the opportunity.
Well, let's begin. I'd like to learn a little bit about both of you gentlemen. Mr. Williams, if you could start, tell me where you grew up, where you're from originally.
Well, I'm an Army brat. I was born at Fort Sill. My dad joined the Army in 1913, retired in 1944. My brothers were all born at Fort Sill. I went to Cameron College 1 year, and then I hitchhiked to Oklahoma A&M. And I arrived here and with about a nickel in my pocket. And I got to the field house. The reason I came here was interesting. I enrolled at Cameron A&M, a junior college at Lawton, and I used the Oklahoma A&M catalog to enroll at Cameron, but I followed their program for graduation. I went there 1 year as the athletic trainer under Lyle Yarbrough. I saw Coach Lookaball in 1943 All-State game where he was recruiting. And they were playing the All-State football game at Taft Stadium. I jumped the fence there and ran across the field and caught him. And I hadn't seen him in 5 years. I saw him in 1938 when he took the job at Oklahoma A&M. And I was underneath a stadium at Lawton, Oklahoma, taking care of equipment. And he came up to me and he asked me where the coach was, Coach Brian Griffin. I said, he's right down the hall. He said, well, I'm Coach Jim Lookaball. I saw him 5 years later and he called me by name. But anyway, I asked him, I said, do you need a trainer? He said, we might. You'll have to come to Stillwater and contact Coach Iba. So I thought, well, that's a chance, opportunity. So about a month later, I hitchhiked to Stillwater. Didn't know where Stillwater was. I had no idea. By myself. I got here and went to the field house and asked him if Coach Iba was here. And Coach Iba wasn't there. He's out fishing. He's on vacation. Well, I had a nickel in my pocket. I come out the east door of Gallagher Hall, and there's a guy that I went to school with at Cameron chopping goat heads on the end of the practice field, J.C. Kolar. I said, what are you doing up here? He said, I'm trying to get a scholarship. He's a football player. He and I attended Cameron College together. It's interesting, he hadn't played high school football. He played basketball at Warren, Oklahoma. To make a long story short, well, he got a scholarship and played guard on the football team. Don knows him. Don played with him. And but anyway, he put me up for the night. I didn't have any money. He bought me a hamburger and put me up for the night. And the next day, Coach Iba returned. So I was sitting on the steps on the east side of Gallagher Hall, and another guy was sitting on the other side. He had a suit on. I had a t-shirt on and jeans, or Levi's, all owned. He went in first. I thought, well, there goes the job. He looks better than me. Anyway, he finally called me into the office and he said, "What can you do?" I said, "I can do anything you got to do. You just name it." He said, "No." I said, "What do you do in athletics?" And I told him, taped ankles, and all that stuff. So he said, "Okay," and he put both of us on. Bob Jameson was the other boy's name. He's from Woodward, Bob Fenimore's hometown. So then the season started. I was trainer in the training room in the afternoon and at night for football and at night for basketball. And Jameson quit about October, November. Now I got the job. I was it. So I spent the next 3 or 4 years as the trainer, athletic trainer for Oklahoma A&M. And that's my story.
Okay. Well, we're going to get back to more of that story in a second. Mr. Fowler, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from originally.
I was born in Tulsa, 1926. Moved to Cleveland with my parents, obviously, in 1929. Came here in 44 on athletic scholarship in football. Played that year until we went to Cotton Bowl, and at the Cotton Bowl, Uncle Sam drafted me, and which was fine. And I was there 2 years. Came back out of the service. I was in the infantry in Arkansas and at Fort Benning. I was not overseas at the time. And came back. I had played ball at the end of the war, while the commanders at each large military institution checked through the rosters to see if anybody had ever played college football. And it made no difference, Air Corps, Navy, whatever you were in, if you'd played ball, they wanted you to stay in because each of those guys wanted a championship team. Well, the way I wound up in the infantry was that when I was drafted, and I got my draft call in the 1st of December, but we were going to go to the Cotton Bowl. We'd already been told we were going to Cotton Bowl. So another good friend, Jim Patton, played ball, and he was from Stroud. His birthday was one day apart from mine in September. But we went to Coach Luckerbaugh and said, "Look, we've got our draft calls." And Coach Luckerbaugh said, "Don't worry about that, boys, I'll take care of it." So we didn't worry about it, and we came back after we'd won, and we did win. We came back, and we'd been back 4 or 5 days, and I told old Patton, "Let's go down and tell them we're here." And we walked in that office, and there were 3 of us. There was myself, Jim Patton, and Jim Spavital. Well, Jim Spavital had gotten his draft call the 1st of that December. So he didn't have any problems when we come in with qualifying for his choice of service. So when we went through the line, we went down to Oklahoma City on a bus, and I was seated next to a man who was 38 years old and manager of F.W. Woolworth, 5 and 9. He had a son who was a first lieutenant and a pilot in the Air Corps, and he was being drafted. The father was. We sat next to each other on the bus. Anyhow, we go to they put us up at the Egbert Hotel in Oklahoma City. The next morning, we go down, and they're going to run us through. So we start through that line, and they ask us, well, I was ahead. I was the first one through, I guess because I was the shortest. And they asked me what I'd like, and I said, well, I think I'd like the Navy. They said, you got Army or Navy? What? I said, Navy sounds good. And he looked down at my papers, and he said, well, you're delinquent. And infantry on there. And Jim Patton got the same treatment I did. He went through, and Patton was about to 8 inches taller than I was, and he went through and he got the same treatment. Infantry. Spavital, who wasn't delinquent, followed him, and he said, I think I'd like the Navy. Well, they sent him to Great Lakes Naval Training. So I was 2 years in there. The war ended, and after Japan surrendered, that's when they put out all the commanders, the commandants at the different military establishments, put out the papers on who had played college ball. Well, I had been to Benning before that anyhow, and then I was back in Arkansas, and so I wound up in Fort Benning, and I played, and half of that team were all graduates of the military academy. So anyhow, we wound up as national service champions. We beat everybody. And the interesting part about that was, I told you a little bit about the military. The commandant was Iron Michael Daniel. Well, after we'd won the first 3 or 4 games, when we would come back, he always wanted some planes. I mean, a military group down there, a band and everything, welcoming home the winners of these football games. And we would fly around up there. One time we came in, and generally we could land, but one time we came in and that group were not down there. And he would not let, there were 3 planes. There was 2 planes for the players, 1 plane for his other officers who he would take to each of the games. When we were flying around, we flew around for about an hour waiting for that honor guard to get there, spending the good old military's money so we could have, anyhow. We landed, and we were, as soon as that was over, as soon as the season was over, why, they gave us old gold footballs and a gold fountain pen and said, thank you for being here and goodbye. And I left and came back and went to Oklahoma A&M again. And I hurt my back when I was in the service. And I was out here, I came back in January of 47. I was there through the fall, but I'd injured my back, and in the spring, I had problems, and then the next fall, the fall of 48, I hurt my back again. So then I decided, well, I shouldn't be playing ball. Well, I transferred over to Tulsa because my brother, who'd also played ball over there, was back out of the service and going to Tulsa. So I transferred to the University of Tulsa and got my degree out of there in 49. That was the extent of my time here, was in 44 and then back in 47 and then to the University of Tulsa.
Now, Mr. Williams, when you were on campus working and going to school, where did you live?
Gallagher Hall.
Now, explain the setup for me. How did that work?
At that particular time, it wasn't like it is now. As you know, they remodeled it. But at that time, there was a room next to the training room. And I roomed there with Bob Curlin, Joe Halbert over the years. And the first roommate was Tom Jackwett, who was a basketball player in Curland. And the outlay of the gym or the Gallagher was on that side was a hallway with the training room the bedroom and the training room and this sort of a apartment style thing was a room with a bath in there. And Curlin had those long beds. I don't know whether you've heard of them or not, but he was about 6'10" or maybe 7 feet, advertised as 7 feet. But anyway, he had the long bed, and Jackwett was about 6'3" or 4", and he had a bed in there, long bed. Well, Halbert was about 6'7", 6'8", something like that. He is from Throckmorton, Texas. And later on, Blake Williams, a friend of mine, came up from Lawton and played basketball on the national champions. There's 2 kids from Lawton on that team, were Blake Williams and Weldon Kern. But anyway, Curlin was my roommate, in Tom Jackwit that first year. Of course, I'd never heard of Bob Kurland, being from Lawton, all that. I didn't even know where Stillwater was. No, I hadn't been out of Comanche County. But anyway, we were out there practicing football, and I was out there on the field with the teams. And this big, tall, red-headed guy came out there and said, "Give me the key to the room." I said, "I don't know you. I'm not giving you anything." Of course, I don't know why I said that, because I didn't have anything but 2 pair of Levi's and T-shirts. He couldn't wear them anyway. But anyway, I said, "I'm not giving you a key." So we went in, and Coach Iba straightened it out and all that, and I gave him the key to the room where we stayed. But I can't tell you what Oklahoma A&M meant to me. Words cannot describe it. The camaraderie of everybody up here, from the faculty on, there's no price it can be bought. And they still have my loyalty. But Kurland was my roommate for many years. We stayed here and graduated together. And Kolar played guard and Don played guard. And to me, it's a mark of a character that played guard, because he wasn't very big, you know. At that time, they weren't very big. Kolar was a big guy at that time. Weighed about 200 pounds, I think. But that's another story too. Kolar played for Cameron, and we were practicing out there, and I was again the trainer for Lyle Yarbrough and Cameron. Lyle Yarbrough was the coach. Kolar had played basketball at Warren, Oklahoma. And he came out there and watched us practice. We were running plays for timing in football. After practice over, he said, "I believe I can do that." So he asked Coach Yarbrough if he'd check out a suit. Coach Yarbrough said, "Yeah." Of course, everybody's in the Army and the Navy then. We was all on borrowed time waiting for the draft. But anyway, Kolar went out for football, or didn't know how to put his equipment on or anything else. And we got him lined out, and he boxed there. He played football and boxed there for the school, and then came up here in 1943. But that's sort of my story. And after I trained here and graduated, I coached at Eastern Oklahoma A&M at Wilburton, the junior college. And then he quit football at the school there, and so I moved on to Borger, Texas High School, then to Lawton High School, and then to Shawnee High School, where I retired.
How did you become involved in athletic training?
At Lawton High School, I had a coach by the name of Brian Griffin. He was practicing football in 1938, or before that, 1937. And he was practicing about a block from where I lived. I went up there and I was picking up the footballs after practice. He thought I was trying to steal them. But anyway, we met then, Coach Brian Griffin and myself. And another guy was there, Coach Glenn Dosser, who was a graduate of Oklahoma A&M. Played for Ted something. My mind comes. But anyway, Coach Griffin, later on, I became his water boy. That's literally what it was. Carrying 12-quart bottled water out on the field. They didn't have all these jugs on the sideline. And you have to realize in football at that time, 11 guys started the game and 11 guys played both ways. There wasn't 11 guys coming in and out or substituting a lot. You didn't get to substitute unless there was a timeout or somebody got hurt. But anyway, I was a water boy, and then he taught me how to tape ankles and a few other things where I could help the team, so I did. So I was the trainer there for the football and the basketball team. Coach Dawson was the basketball coach. And then I coached, one of the football coaches was the track coach, and I became the trainer there, taping ankles and all that. And I went to Cameron and trained basketball and football. Hitchhiked up here in 1943 after talking to Coach at Lookaball. And in 1945, I had appendicitis. And they took me to the hospital, Coach Lookaball did. First of all, Joe Halbert, my roommate, he walked me across the campus into the infirmary. And I got there, and Coach Lookaball came, Coach Iben, he took me to the hospital and took my appendix out. They was going to play OU that week. I believe that week we played Texas Tech too, and then later they would have played, and I was in the hospital at the time. And then they played OU the next week, something like that. And I was still in the hospital. But while I was in there, the coach brought Coach Lookaball's son in. Called him Buzz. Eddie Lookaball. Well, his mother, he's wanting to go to the OU game. His mother he had pneumonia. And his mother said, no, you can't go. You got to go to the hospital. And she told him I was there, so he agreed he'd come. That was the way Oklahoma A&M was. His family. It really was. Well, Mrs. Lookaball, she brought some soup up there to Eddie, and she brought me soup too. She's taking care of me. And I'll never shall forget it.
Mr. Fowler, was there a big sense of bedlam back then?
Big sense of what?
Of bedlam when you played OU?
Oh, yeah, well, yes, always. And of course, we beat them, which hurt them greatly. And there was another Cleveland boy playing for OU at that time. So it was, I think the score was 28 to 6.
Do you remember every win and every loss?
I do.
And every score.
I do. I suffer the torture of the damned when we lose.
How did you make the transition from being the trainer to coaching?
Well, again, it was Kolar. I was hitchhiking all over the state at that time. I didn't have any money still. You don't have much money after you graduate. So I was hitchhiking all over the state trying to find a job. Well, you can imagine somebody 4 feet 11 trying to get a job. So I hitchhiked up here to check and see if anybody's looking for somebody to help them. And Kolar was up here. He was playing for Chicago Cardinals. And he said, Red Gardner's hunting the coach. Said, he just left here about an hour ago. I said, well, I missed him. So he said, well, he's coaching at Eastern A&M at Wilburton. So I thought, well, that's an opportunity. So I found a way to get to Wilburton, and Mr. President C.C. Dunlap hired me to help Guy Gardner coach football and basketball at Eastern. And I started baseball at Eastern while I was there to keep the kids out of trouble. You know how athletes get in trouble if they're on their own.
I know.
So I started baseball so I could get those guys out of the dorm where they wouldn't get in trouble. And of course I kept the dorm and coached football and basketball and all that kind of stuff. And did the taping and all that while I was there. So that's Coach Gardner and Mr. Dunlap hired me at Eastern, so that's where I started. And, every football coach I had was a winner. Coach Lookaball was a winner at Capitol Hill, and he came up here and was a winner. Coach Griffin was a winner at Lawton, and Coach Dawson was a winner. Of course, one year, the first year I was the water boy at Lawton, 1938, well, we were undefeated going into the end of the season, and we played Hollis, a smaller, quote, a smaller school at that time, supposedly. And Terry Seddon and Don Royal, who was a brother to Darrell Royal, was on the Hollis team, and they were very good players. And both of them were all-state and all that. I later refereed for Don Royal at Tipton. Don coached Tipton High School. But anyway, we were 11-0 when we played Hollis, and they beat us. So it was 11-1 winning. Then went to Cameron and they won the junior college championship. And went 2 years at Lawton High School. We were undefeated in football. Took our licks in basketball. We was terrible. But we had a couple of good players on those teams. One of them was Weldon Kern, came up here and played. And then Blake Williams played up here. And they were on the national champions. And I believe Blake's senior year, they went to the Final Four and went to the final against Kentucky. So there's good players. Weldon Kern even played fullback on the football team. He wasn't very big. But, well, I've had a lot of good experience considering my size and everything, considering athletics. And some of the guys we had then, I feel I couldn't even get a suit today on account of the size and everything. But that, I've always worried about it. To me, it's not the size of the dog in the fight a lot of times. It's the size of the fight and the dog. I've always felt that way, and I always tried to impress that on my players and my children.
Let's talk a little bit about the Cotton Bowl. What was it like for you, Mr. Fowler, to play in that game?
It was wonderful. It was, in first place, we really whomped them. It was 34 to nothing.
Yeah. I thought I was going to get to play.
So it was a real thrill. And the fact that we got to, I guess we owe the fact that Coach Lookabaugh didn't turn us in, and that's why we got to choose the infantry. That's why we went to the infantry instead of where we wanted to go. But when we came back, they had for us here, if you lettered, you got a suede jacket that came down to midway between your belt and your knees. Had your letter on there. Inside, it had a big engraved deal inside that said Cotton Bowl Champions 1945. And we had a little go football from playing there. And it was right after that we went off to play to go to service and fight in the big one. But no, it was a great thrill, as anything like that would be. Now, you must remember, I was a small town boy, Cleveland town of about 2,000 people. I would like to mention that one of my grade school teachers was Jessie Thatcher, who was the first woman graduate from Oklahoma A&M. And at that time, she was Jessie Thatcher boss. And during the war, she lost her one son.
What do you remember from that game, that Cotton Bowl game?
Oh, I was expecting to play when they got ahead. Boy, I'll get to play. But there was a guy from Texas University, Andrews. I believe they called him Rooster Andrews, and he kicked extra points. Well, I could drop kick the ball. I thought, well, I'll go out. He'll let me go out there and kick that extra point. But it never happened. Of course, when I was in high school, I thought the high school coach would let me play. We was beating somebody 40-0 in high school. I thought, I'll get in this. I'll get to play tonight. But the only time I got to play football was in the spring. that Coach Luckabaugh didn't have enough players to practice spring football. And he scrimmaged the high school team, and he let me suit up. And I got to play. And I threw a pass to Harvey Griffin, and he scored a touchdown. I thought, man alive, no sweat. And then that kid later played for OU. I threw a pass and he intercepted, and I thought, he ain't going to score. He thinks he's going to score, but he's not. I ran out there and grabbed him around the waist and threw my legs around his legs, and he fell on top of me. My helmet was clear. I was looking out the ear hole of the helmet and all that Mickey Mouse. And they piled on me, and old Luckabaugh run out there. He thought I was dead, I think. Players all ran out and got around. I was throwing them high school kids off of me like they'd kill me. But anyway, it was a wonderful time for me. And I really like to dance, so that's another story too.
Did you attend many dances on campus?
Oh, that was one of the siren calls to me. I was walking up to Gallagher, I call it Gallagher, and Swims. I heard that jukebox going up there in Swims, and I went in there, and Mel Bosman, who was the drum majorette on the band for the band, was in there, and man, she could dance, and we danced. So that was another tie. I have a lot of wonderful memories.
Did you dance anywhere else on campus?
Oh, the Howdy Dance they had then, I don't know whether you ever heard of that or not, but on campus, the first freshmen came in, or when the first day of classes or something, they had a Howdy Dance. Well, we had that. We enjoyed that. Or I did. But anytime they had the dancing going, I was ready.
What type of music did you listen to back then?
Glenn Miller.
And you, sir?
Oh, the same. And music's never been the same since the 40s. You all are much too young to understand how good it was in the 40s. And poor old Glenn Miller went down in his plane going across the English Channel to France. And so we lost all of Glenn Miller's good stuff. But all music in those days was excellent. What there is out there now, people my era wouldn't give a flip for. They wouldn't even listen to it. And right on, I'm one of those folks. Those were great days.
Did a lot of the football players and other athletes get together to go to dances?
Jimmy Spavital, he was a good dancer. Jimmy Palmer, both of them fullbacks, had a lot of rhythm. Of course, Cameron is like that. They had a shop across the street. Great big old man named Barker, weighed about 300 pounds. He ran that shop there at Cameron, and that had a little old dance floor out there about as big as Swims had. And but Leslie Swim and his family go back a long ways. Their dad, I think, loaned a lot of money to kids in the 30s to go to Oklahoma A&M. And every kid came back and paid them off. Every kid that graduated came back and paid them off. But I remember the Swim family. That is excellent for Oklahoma A&M kids.
Did you visit any other places off campus to hang out outside of Swims?
Not me.
There wasn't any way to get to it. Nobody had cars.
Had to walk everywhere.
Most of the people came down here just as I did. You came by your thumb. I came with one suitcase.
Most of the guys we had, that's, of course, Gerald Parks, I think, and Bill Walker. Walker played on the football team. Parks played on the basketball team. And Joe Thomas played on the football team. They came up by train from Pauls Valley. And when they got here, they reported, and Coach Luckabaugh put football pads on J.L. Parks, who was a basketball player. And he sent Parks out to the football field for Coach Baker to check out to see if he could play. Well, Parks got out there and he didn't know straight up and sick 'em about football. He was from Paola. And Coach Iba came out and he said, "What are you doing out here?" The secretary had sent him a football letter. But Coach Baker asked him, he said, what did you play in high school? He said, guard. He'd been a guard in basketball. So he was out there on a 7-man sled and all that stuff.
Did he make the team?
No. Coach Iba run him off the football field.
Now, you trained for football, basketball,
wrestling, and track.
What was your favorite?
Football.
Football.
Probably.
What's your favorite football memory?
Oh, there's all good. I didn't have bad memories. I guess the Sugar Bowl and the Cotton Bowl were the best memories. It and the Tulsa game of 1945, I guess it was.
44.
45, 44.
44.
Okay. That was, the reason it was because my dad, we had eaten lunch, pre-game lunch, and Coach Lickaball sent us around the block to walk it off. We were walking down the street down there, I believe east of the Mayo Hotel, and my dad was behind us, and I didn't know that. I didn't even know he was in town. And my dad was in the Army 31 years, and he had stripes that he'd served, service stripes on his arm. He's a master sergeant and all that. But anyway, Joe Chunkamola, who was a guard or tackle, he said, "Hello, Sarge," and I turned around, it's my dad. I said, "What are you doing here?" And Coach Lickaball put him on the bus and took him to the ball game.
Wow.
Fed him lunch and put him on the bus and took him to the ball game. I tell you, they had a good staff. Coach Lickaball had 3 coaches. Coach Lickaball, Coach Baker, and Toby Green. They were fine people.
What was it like working with Coach Iba?
Great. I can't tell you what he meant to the team. And discipline. Very highly disciplined. But, when they put Mr. on his name, it had some value. It wasn't just a title of respect. It was respect, all right, but it was earned. Very valuable. Of course, my experience, one experience was one night we were practicing, and time was sort of nebulous to him. He said, I was standing there and he said, "What time is it?" So I ran out. I said, "Oh, about 10 o'clock. He said, "I didn't ask you about. I asked you what time it was." Whew. And I went out there in the hall to find out what time it was. I didn't have a watch. I came back and told him the right time. I never forgot it. But, he's in class by himself. I can't tell you the knowledge he gave in basketball. These people today, they owe him a lot. And they don't know it. They really don't. But his value to me was integrity, compete, and don't leave anything to chance. You don't make a bunch of mistakes and beat yourself. That's sort of like life to me. You don't beat yourself. You don't become a drunk. You don't become a drug addict, anything like that. You straighten up and fly right.
Was it hard going to school and training at the same time?
Not to me, it wasn't.
What was your major?
Physical education.
And your master's degree? The same?
It's in counseling.
And where did you take some of your classes? What buildings on campus?
History and physical education.
Okay. Did you spend much time in the library at that time?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
That was a negligent part on my part. I didn't impress that on my children. They got that on their own.
Mr. Fowler, what is your favorite football memory?
When we beat Tulsa 44-40, because Tulsa at that time, the coach was in Franca. And as I mentioned earlier, my brother had a scholarship down there to play for Tulsa, and my brother was much larger than I was. And anyhow, Tulsa the year before in 43 just womped up. Well, they womped up on everybody, and they'd won. They went to a bowl game every year, and they won every year. And they didn't give us a chance. They thought they could, this year's team, they just run all over us. And I have one very, very vivid memory when we were getting ready to go out on the field, and I had to run in and relieve myself at the urinal. And I was standing there, and they had a great big tackle. And he was about 12 to 14 inches taller than I was, and outweighed me by at least 75 pounds. And he was an All-American. And he kind of patted me on the head and said, "Well, I hope you boys do all right today." And I never, the guy's name was Glenn Burgess, and I will never forget that. And when we played Tulsa, we had to play, we had Fenimore, Hankins, Armstrong. We had great backs back there. Cecil Hankins was the greatest athlete I've ever known. He is the only athlete I've ever known that played professionally both football and basketball. And he did them both, and he could do anything. And he was Fenimore and Hankins and Armstrong. It was a battle right down to the bloody end. And then Tulsa couldn't believe that they'd lost. And that's when we got to bid to go to the Cotton Bowl. Of course, Tulsa had gone to bowls every year. And Henry Franklin, who'd coached over there, had done an outstanding job. But that was my favorite memory of a ball. It was nice to beat OU and all, but when we beat Tulsa after they'd womped on us the year before and went all the way, and it was just, they couldn't believe it.
Tell me about walkouts.
Do what?
Tell me about the walkout. When a big game, after we won a big game, students would have a walkout the next day. How did the athletes feel about walkouts?
I don't remember any walkouts. We didn't have
We didn't
You
walkouts.
didn't do walkouts?
Listen,
Not
in those
after that
days,
game. No.
They came by. There wasn't any of this business of not making your grades. They'd come by at least once a month to check to see how you were standing in your class. And there was no such thing as a walkout. And you also, the scholarship that you had at that time was room, board, books, and tuition, and you got $15 a month, and that was it. But out of season, you had to work for it. You either worked sweeping up the gym, goosing grass, and you had to do that all the time out of season. It was a totally different era than it is and has been since, and it's a lot more fun. It really was. It was.
In the 30s, the job the players had was to plant trees out here on the campus. All the trees on the campus were planted by a football player.
Wow.
In the 30s. That was their job. These guys cleaned the restrooms in Gallagher. Curlin swept the floor. Halbert and me and Jack, we locked the gym up at night. So somebody couldn't come in there and tear it up, you know. Of course, Coach Iba was very protective of the court. You didn't walk on there with your shoes on or anything. But at the end of the year, well, they had a dance in there, but whoever had the dance redid the floor.
Wow.
Sanded it and recovered it or varnished it.
And nowadays you see when somebody wins a big game, the fans rush the court. Back then, I take it that's a big no-no. Wouldn't even be.
When we won the national basketball championship in basketball, I was on the, what do you call it, student union or student council. I was representing the School of Education. And we asked Coach Bennett, or President Bennett, to let us have a walkout the next day. He did. So that's the only walkout I can ever remember.
What other activities were you involved with outside of Student Senate?
Just student council, I was on that 1 year, I think. I was in SAE, but I was never one for that much partying around. When I was a pledge, they said, pick up cigarette butts. I said, I don't even smoke, so I'm not picking up anybody's cigarette butts. So I didn't. That's.
Mr. Fowler, were you involved in any groups on campus?
No.
Okay. And what was your major in while you were here?
When I was here,
Mm-hmm.
it was in commerce.
And when you graduated from the University of Tulsa?
It's in business. Business management.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead, you had a thought.
Kolar became a civil engineer later on. It's sort of a history of this team.
Okay.
And he built the silos in Washington. Those for those missiles and everything. He was a civil engineer, and he worked in Portland, Oregon. He died in Lake Oswego Hospital. But anyway, he was a civil engineer and came back for a union one year, and the guy said, I heard you made a lot of money. He said, if you mean I moved a lot of dirt, you're right.
Do you guys keep in touch with everybody
Yes.
from those days?
We had.
Yeah, we of course call him a lot of times. I do anyway.
There's not many of us left.
Neil Armstrong, I call him, and I call Kolar's wife every once in a while. And I call Fenimore, keep in contact with Fenimore. Curlin, I call him sometimes. Check on him, be sure he's behaving.
Is that important still to you to do? To
Do
keep
what?
in touch? Is it important to keep in touch with everybody?
Yes, it is, to me, anyway.
We started having reunions every 5 years in what was about 55.
Something like that.
And
yeah.
then we had them every 5 years. And now, then we got down to 4 and then 3, and now we're at 2, and we didn't have one this year. I mean, not, we're down to 2 years so that we can, there's not very many of us left. And I've told Bob before, another year or two, and there was a card table to take care of everybody. And that's, that's just the way it is. They're all pegged out.
But we is pretty close, no kidding. I can't describe to you the closest of the players is a sort of a family.
Well, what is it about Oklahoma State that sparks such loyalty in its students and alumni?
I think it's I don't know, camaraderie might not be the word, but the care of the institution for the student. Dr. Bennett, to me, exemplified this. Dr. Wilhelm Wilhelm exemplified it. My children came up here, and my youngest daughter, she thought a lot of Dr. Cam. So, just, it's something that comes down.
Did all of your children attend Oklahoma State?
Did my children come?
Uh-huh.
3 of them came. 2 of them graduated. One of them went to University of Central Oklahoma at Edmond, graduated, English teacher. And then my youngest daughter went here, and my grandson went here, and my youngest boy went here, but he didn't graduate. He's finding himself.
That happens. That happens. Mr. Fowler, what is it about Oklahoma State that you think sparks such loyalty in students and alumni?
I think you may think this is a biased opinion, but things were so different back then than they are now. There's no comparison with what was there then and what's here now. I'm not talking just about Oklahoma A&M. I'm talking about any other university or college in this country or what goes on outside of that. They were just different times. You got to remember that the 30s was a depression. The 30s was a horrible drought. People don't understand what that was like. And this generation certainly doesn't have any idea. And you would no more have a campus rebellion or anything. You just didn't have that. And you would no more have anybody say our people shouldn't be in Iraq than anything. If you condemned World War II, you'd get punched out immediately. People wouldn't put up with that. And it's a totally different society. I think Oklahoma A&M does a fine job. I think the University of Tulsa does a fine job. I wouldn't give you a nickel for Harvard or any of the California folks out there because I don't believe in that type of life. I wouldn't send my children to a place like that or my grandchildren for any amount of money. I don't mean to be political, but when you ask what makes it a difference, you can't compare. There's just no comparison.
And did your children attend OSU?
No, they went to OU.
Oh.
We lived in Norman at the time when they came college age. And our eldest son is a heart surgeon. He went to OU and went on to the med school, and that's what he does, is operate.
Well, I'd like to end this interview by, if you guys could possibly tell me your favorite story from back in those days. You should have that, that one story when you get together, you always sit around the table and tell. Do you have that one story?
I can tell you one story.
Oh, hold on one sec. Do you need to switch? Yeah, let's switch this tape real quick. Give you some time to think about that story. This is tape 2 of our interview with Mr. Williams and Mr. Fowler. Well, as we get ready to end this interview, I'd like you both to share one of your favorite stories or favorite memories of your time here at Oklahoma A&M. Mr. Williams?
Well, they're all good to me. I have so many good ones, can't single out one.
Well, you can say a few if you like.
Really.
Oh, sure.
I guess the greatest memory is when I was accepted by Coach Henry Ibel to be the student trainer. Ended up being the trainer. But, the memory I have of that time was the respect with which I was treated. And one of the fondest memories I have is when my mother came up here one time, and Coach Iba had never seen her but one time in his life, to me. And he called her by name. He had a tremendous memory. Tremendous. But that affiliation with those coaches and their care for their players. Of course, Coach Lookable, he had to be pretty tough to play because a lot of times you get hurt, he says, that's a long way from your heart. Keep going. But they were good to me.
What was graduation day like?
Oh, I finally got to the end of the road where I could maybe get a job and take the load off my parents.
Did you attend commencement in the arena?
Yes, we were in Gallagher at the time. They had it in Gallagher. It's a wonderful feeling that I'd accomplished something, yes.
Did your parents come and attend and see you?
No, my mother was sick at the time. And she had the emphysema, so it's a pretty tough time.
And did you meet your wife here?
No, she and I went to high school together, and she is my best girl in high school. And I came up here, and the grass was greener for a while. I was busy dancing and all that. So we sort of parted for a while and got back together when I went back to Lawton to coach.
And how long have you guys been married?
Do what?
How long have you guys been married?
Oh, since...
Not to put you on the spot.
About 53, 54 years. No, 53 years. 53 years.
All right, Mr. Fowler, what is your best, favorite story from your OAMC years?
Well, it goes back. It goes back to when I first came down here. We came down, and as soon as we came down in the summer, in June, right after school was out, and they started practice. And we practiced all summer, and it came time for the All-State game, and a number of us were honored enough to get to go play in the All-State game. And we played in Taft Stadium and spent a couple of nights in Taft Stadium. And you have to remember, in those days, nobody had any money. You slept on camp cots in there, just wherever you could put everybody. It was divided up into North versus South. And there were a number of us on this team that made All-State, and so we all participated in that game. And after the game, and it rained, and here we'd been practicing all summer, and it'd been hot as terribly hot summer, and it started raining after the game. And Coach Green, you'd have to appreciate, he wasn't much bigger than Bob Williams, and he was the line coach and tougher than a bird. And he came in after that game, and we're in there cleaning up and getting ready to leave and spend another night there on those camp cots. And he said, practice starts tomorrow. Well, we'd just been practicing all summer and had just gone down and practiced for that All-State game for a couple of weeks. And then we play the game, and old Coach Green comes up and says, practice starts tomorrow. Well, we didn't have any way of getting up. People didn't have cars. If you'd had a car, there wasn't any gas available at that time. You were limited to 5 gallons a week on a car, if you had a car. Well, Jim Patton, the big tall guy that I was telling you about, that we and I were drafted at the same time, were hitchhiking our way up here. And we had a terrible time getting a ride. Nobody would pick us up. Bill Walker was with us, and nobody would pick us up. And so we didn't get in, and by the time we got up here, they'd already been practicing. Now, the Patton was a runner, and he was a fast runner, and he was a miler. The first time I ever saw him was at the state track meet that year, and he won the mile, but he was 6'4" and redheaded. Well, here we are thumbing our way up here, and it takes us. We make it to Guthrie after a couple of hours, and Walker and I are starving to death. And old Patton says, "I know a place we can eat." Well, we went. He had to duck his head to get in this place to get a hamburger. And in those days, hamburgers were only a nickel and a dime. Anyhow, we had the hamburger. And we go out and we start thumbing. And by the time we get up here, why, we go up to Gallagher Hall and go to get go to tell them we're here, and we look out there, and everybody's practiced, but we haven't been there. We start walking out that east door, and Mr. Abbott's sitting out there with his suit on, and he looks up and said, "You boys are a little late, aren't you?" And we said, "Yes, sir," because it was always, "Yes, sir, Mr. Abbott." And he said, "Well, you better go tell Coach you're here." And we walked out there to tell Coach we're there, and he's giving everybody a lecture. And Toby Green comes up, and he said, he didn't ask any questions. He said, "Get your suits on." Well, here's the three of us. And by the time we get ready to go get our suits on, everybody else is running in, and we have to start running around that practice field out there. And we ran, and after about 3 laps around the practice field, old Patton collapsed in a pile of vomit. And Walker and I had to haul him in because he would run his guts out. Now, you may ask why I'm telling you this story, but the story is the times were different, and it was a lot of fun, and there was a lot of discipline. When they told you to do something, they expected you to do it. And there weren't 3 finer folks than the coaches we had at that time. And I was especially fond of Toby Green because he was the line coach. And another good example, he was trying, before we went over to play Tulsa, and he had the lineman out there. And he would say, first place, the lineman had what they called separators. And separators were 4 posts out there, and you'd line up and you'd be on offense and on defense, and they'd snap the ball. And you had to run over that guy, either blocking him or trying to get through him, because they were separators, and that separated the men from the boys. And Toby Green made us do that every day. And the linemen and the ends and the backs were out there throwing passes and doing all this other stuff, not getting bummed up at all. So when we were getting ready to play Tulsa, Toby Green was giving us a lecture, the lineman, and he was also the baseball coach. And I never will forget this. He was a little old bandy-legged guy, and he was full of vinegar and venom. And he said, "You guys wouldn't step on a man's face if he was on the ground, but I would." And he took that old baseball cleat and just dug it in the ground. Well, that's when I knew that they meant business. Now, this doesn't have, I'm sure you understand, this doesn't have anything to do, but the times were totally different, so it's hard to compare what was going on then and what's going on now. And those are things I'll never forget.
Of course, one time I was down there, we went to practice, and they were having a hard time getting somebody to catch the punts. And I had a lot of aptitude in that regard, so Coach Lickerbaugh said, "Go down there and catch the punts." So I went down there to catch the punts. And whoever was kicking, I don't remember, but anyway, it was short. It hit the ground, bounced, rolled up there and rolled dead, and I went up there. I just ran up there and was going to pick it up. And a guy named Hutchison from Sherman, Texas, he is the center. He come barreling into me and just turned me upside down, knocked me out, and I was laying there. like a dead dog. Coach Liverpool thought he'd kill me. But that was a memorable time.
Makes you want to be a punt returner.
Yeah. But anyway, it's interesting for me.
Well, is there anything else you guys would like to share that I have not asked you about today that you want to tell us?
Oh, I tried to think, but I worry about today, about the athletes. Because what was given to us seemed like it's gone by the boards, gone by the wayside. I want to win, don't misunderstand me, but I don't want to cheat to win. I don't want my teams to cheat to win. I want them to come out there and win and do it right. And when they leave this school, they'll be loyal to it, and they'll receive from it what I received from the coaching staff. And I don't know, it bothers me that the premium is placed on winning, and I understand today you got to win. You have to win, or they fire the coach. I think, hey, the coach ain't playing the game. It's the players. They got to decide. It's the fight and the dog. It's not the dog in the fight. And of course, we had a reunion, and I was sitting up there at the couloir. I think it was when Pat Jones was here. And he was really upset. He said, look at them fat guys out there. He said, they're not in shape. That's the way I thought. They're not in shape. They'll poop out in the fourth quarter. Sure enough, they did.
Mm-hmm.
But that was Couloir. He'd come up the hard way. He'd come up the cotton patch of southwestern Oklahoma, and he didn't go for that loafing around. Don talking about the separators. You got in the separators with him, you better be ready. He'd love to hit you with his fist or something else. Anything he could hit you with. He didn't like to lose. But, he's a close bunch. Coaches, players, and the school. The school really cared, to me. Dr. Wilhelm, I think when he became president, he did not want the legislature or anybody else to increase the fees or whatever it is so much the kid couldn't go to school here. Mm-hmm. We had great presidents when we were here. I'm not kidding you. Maybe they weren't political, but they was good presidents. Dr. Bennett tried to do something for the nation when he put the .4 program in. Tried to help Ethiopia, those places. That is invaluable in our lives, I'll tell you. Money can't buy it. I thank you for this opportunity to uphold this school.
Well, we appreciate it, especially you sharing your stories today. It really means a lot to us. Thank you again for taking time out. I could probably spend hours and hours with you guys going over all the great old stories. But
We had some honor, guys, but
of course, some of those stories we may not want to put on tape.
we weren't shooting each other.
But we do appreciate it.